I would like to begin with wishing you all a happy new year. May 2025 bring more joy and fulfillment in your lives. Today we discuss a bit about Android and iOS. Not the eternal comparison though, but more of a guide for you in case you are deciding between buying an Android and an iPhone. I'll try to be as objective as possible, but there will be times when I will express my own personal opinions. Let's begin. So, what we are going to do is to take each system and point some of its advantages, but also some of these disadvantages. And there will also be times when we will directly compare them, depending on the subject. Let's begin with iOS, and in fact, let's begin with the iPhone. iOS has changed a lot in the past years. It used to be a system that could not be personalized at all. The way you got it, that's how you kept it. It had a major advantage though, the integration into the Apple ecosystem. Very easy to transfer files with AirDrop, share details, and seamless integration with iCloud. Now, some of the services they offer bring additional costs, but they're not the only ones who do that. However, they are the ones which have introduced this business model pretty much in the smartphones world. In general, iOS is very stable. Very few lags on the final releases, but they are usually corrected pretty fast via additional updates. For example, iOS 18.1 was a disaster considering Apple's standard, but now we got to 18.3 and things have gotten much better. Stable and no lags, at least for me. As a general rule, I do not recommend you using beta versions at all. They are only released for testing and development purposes. Linked with the last idea is the apps integration into the system. Apps that are developed for iOS and iPhones are in general much better optimized. I talked a bit about it in my switching to Android video. Apple likes to have end-to-end control over their ecosystem. And yes, that pretty much means that you are getting only what Apple wants you to get. But at the same time, you are sure that what you get is well optimized and the bugs are minimal. I can see the differences on the apps between my S24 Ultra and my iPhone 13. This is much better, but we will talk about it in another video. Another thing where Apple is still ahead is the software updates. And yes, companies like Samsung or Google offer up to even 7 years of software updates on their flagships, obviously. And that's great. The only difference is that they are not making updates as efficient as Apple does. From what I've seen, Apple offers around 6 years of software updates, and when a new version is released, the update is almost available on all the compatible devices at the same time, or at least in a closed time frame of, let's say, 1 week. Obviously, they had some incidents in the past with their software updates, but in general, they're very well optimized and integrated and adapted for the older devices. Now, I believe that iOS is in general very easy to use. You pretty much have a menu and that's it. But this is not everything. Apple offers you a phone that just works, but not in the way that you think. Most of their apps have pretty much the same structure and look very familiar to everyone, apart from the Photos app. I still don't know what's the deal with that design. Hence, it is not that hard to use when you first get one. You are pretty much familiar with them before you even got one. Now, it is not perfect. Stuff like ProRAW or log shooting are quite hard to find in the settings. You still don't have a lot of control over the camera settings unless you use a third-party software. But for most of the people, that doesn't really matter. You enter the camera, press a button, and boom, you have a photo which most of the times, like 98% of the times, will look very good. And you only have to touch the screen 2 times. The Apple ecosystem is also worth mentioning here. Even if we are only talking about the iPhones, you got AirDrop, you can add a contact in a matter of seconds by just putting your iPhone next to another, iMessages, Find My app, and I can carry on. I still haven't seen anything to come that close to it. And the last thing that I would like to talk about here is the value over time. On the long term, iPhones definitely retain their value better, much better than their Android counterparts. As simple as that. But with phones like this, there are also disadvantages. The first would be that brand new, these phones are very, very expensive. The starting price for an iPhone is $800, and that's for 128 gigabytes of storage. Speaking of which, their storage prices are simply outrageous. So my advice for you would be to get a refurbished one or a second-hand one. The new ones are simply not worth anymore. 2. The base iPhone is stuck at 60 Hz refresh rate. 3. If you are not in the EU, you cannot sideload anything. As I said, iOS and the Apple ecosystem are a closed source thing, and they really like to have control over what is happening in their yard. Also, if you like Fortnite and you're not in the EU, stay away from the iPhones. 4. The design is pretty much the same for years now. Beautiful phones, but boring as hell. Starting with the iPhone X, the design line has pretty much been the same. Something intrusive on the front, a notch or a dynamic island, slight adjustments on the camera module, the same Apple logo centered on the back, pretty much the same screen. And I know that these design choices are intentional because they pretty much make the iPhone easily recognizable. You know an iPhone when you see it. Yes, it helps with brand recognition, but it is also cheaper to produce them if you don't make a lot of changes to the design. Now, let's get to Android. As I told you, I used iOS and other Apple devices for quite some time now. I switched to a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra a few months ago, but I also got to test something more affordable, like this Motorola Moto G85. I have to be honest, Android is not bad or full of bugs anymore. That's simply the truth. The first thing that I want to talk about is that you have a lot of diversity here. You are not restricted to a single brand. There's Samsung, there's Xiaomi, Oppo, OnePlus, Google themselves, etc. They all make great Android phones, and the nice part is that if you want a brand new phone, you don't have to spend close to $1,000 for it. As I said, this Moto G85 is $300 and it is a fantastic phone. I also made a full review for it, and if you want to see it, I'll leave a link down below in the description. On the Android side, there is a phone for every budget. Plus, there are a lot of different phones with different designs and different interfaces, which leads us to the biggest advantage that Android has: customization. Yes, Apple has done a lot from this point of view in the past years, and it's quite customizable now, but it's still not close to Android. Themes, launchers, custom ROMs if you're tech savvy. We also talk about an open source system here. So sideloading is not a problem absolutely anywhere in this world. And as I said, if you want something different, there are custom ROMs which might actually improve your experience with the phone and even make it more efficient. Also, Android as an operating system is quite stable now. Not a lot of bugs really, if any. The Google services, which come with almost every Android phone, are also quite good. I use Gmail as my main email app, and it is very good. You got Google Maps, Google Photos, etc., which work pretty similar with their equivalent from Apple, synced across the board through the cloud. And the free cloud storage that you get is 4 times bigger than what you get with iCloud. My favorite thing or application from GMS is actually Google Drive. You can store your files, any file that you have, but you can also work with documents, and they offer you basically a free Word, free Excel or spreadsheets, free PowerPoint, even if in some cases they are a bit limited compared with their equivalent from Microsoft. They are working awesome, and as I said, they are free to use. You can also get them on an Apple device, don't get me wrong, but it's still something which is made by Google, and normally the Google apps are better optimized for Android, obviously. And GMS in general, it simply works pretty great. If we talk about the mid and low end range side of the Android phones, a thing that I always appreciated is the expandable storage, mostly up to 2 terabytes via a micro SD. Unfortunately, most of the flagships, if not all the flagships, have given up on that micro SD slot. Speaking about the storage, when you connect your phone, your Android phone, to your computer, it's very easy to access pretty much everything that you have in your phone. It kind of acts like an external SSD connected to the PC. It even works on a Mac, even though you have to use a third-party software, but I don't mind it. Now, I want to go back a bit and talk about the side loading part. As I said, Android does not put any restrictions when it comes to side loading. However, they do not control the Play Store in the same maniac way as Apple either. And that leads to stuff like different payment methods, for example. You are not restricted to use only Google Pay. Also, their commissions and rules for payments are not as harsh as Apple's. This is especially good for small businesses, which are just starting and they want to develop apps for phones. Android is a much more welcoming place for them. Now, not everything is nice and pink in the Android world. They still have things to improve. The apps integration is not the best, and this is normal. It is hard to optimize an app for so many different devices. Whereas on the Apple, you have to optimize for, let's say, 4 devices, which are almost the same every single year. This got better in time, obviously. As I said, companies which are making Android phones have spent a lot on R&D and have helped the developers a lot. But still, some progress needs to be made here. The software support is good, but only for flagships. Middle range and low-end phones barely get one major software release and maybe 2 years of security patches. At that price, a second-hand iPhone might offer more. Also, time needs to pass to see how the companies will actually treat those software releases for the flagships, considering that some of them offer even 7 years, more than Apple. But time will tell. Speaking of the flagships, they have become quite expensive as well, and I'm not even trying to talk about the foldable phones, which are simply in another league from that point of view. The normal flagships, sometimes they can be more expensive than an iPhone, but they are losing their value way faster over time. Ecosystem-wise, absolutely no one comes close to Apple right now. The way they link every feature and every device in their own yard is simply insane. Also, on the Android side, you sometimes get 2 ecosystems into the same phone, the GMS and the company's ecosystem. And both are trying to track you on their side instead of collaborating with each other to offer you a better experience. Now, let's draw a line and see if we can get to a conclusion, or to see if you can get to a conclusion. Of course, mainly the decision relies on what you need from your phone. I would say this: if you just want something to work and you want the phone to be good or decent at pretty much everything, go for the iPhone. It will also open the gates for you to a very good, also very expensive ecosystem, which is capable of a lot of things. However, if you care about the design and customization, or you are a tech enthusiast who wants to play with the software, you can find pretty much anything that you need with an Android. I would also say that no matter what you choose, be it an iPhone, a Samsung, an Oppo, a Xiaomi, you name it, you will be more than happy with your choice. All phones from a certain point, from a certain price if you want, are simply amazing. And I love this. I know that I probably missed some arguments. I tried to be as objective as I could. And if there is anything that you would like to add, please feel free to do it down below in the comment section. That's it for this video. I hope you liked it and I hope you found it useful. You can find reviews and more videos like this on our channel here at Digital Dash, so go check them out if you liked this video. Meanwhile, I'll get a new video prepared for next week. I'll see you guys then. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.